Every now and then, I like to have a guest on my show that has been a longtime entrepreneur, maybe even in two, three, four iterations, maybe more. And today is just such a situation. We want you to stay tuned. We'll be right into it shortly.
You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and this is Leadership Powered by Common Sense. We're here to help break down the complex and volatile world of business into some simple, hopefully memorable ideas that you can take with you and use to help grow and expand your business. Today, I have Mr. Anthony McNeil. Anthony is a serial entrepreneur. He's got a story of starting in business on his own at an early age and carrying it forward. You might be able to tell if you're watching the video that he, like me, is a little older than some. And so we're going to talk about that. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hey, Doug. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Tell everybody where you're calling in from.
Well, I'm from a small little province in the east coast of Canada, known as Nova Scotia. The community I'm in is just outside of Halifax, which is our capital, and it's a small community called Lower Sackville. For those of your guests who might be international, we're just above the most easterly and northern part of the United States. So if you go to Maine and you go north and you go even further east, you'll see this long little peninsula stick out of the Atlantic Ocean known as Nova Scotia. So that's where I'm calling from today.
Absolutely. I know the geography. I've sailed around it and up in there and in beautiful country. And well, thanks for joining us. So as I alluded to, Anthony, you've had your hand in several different businesses. Why don't you just kind of recap the journey real quick for everybody? Talk to us about the different things that you've been involved in and started along the way.
Well, yeah, quick. Hopefully I can sum it up for your audience. I got into business at an early age. I was 25 years old. I had no intentions of getting into business. I had actually studied my engineering degree. I'd gotten work in central Canada. A good friend of mine had a carpet cleaning business, and he had an opportunity to land a big contract with a national retailer. But one of the conditions was that he had to prove that the business could work in the city I just left 2 years earlier. So he asked, would I leave my job, go back, clean carpets for a year, see how it all turned out. And at 25 years of age, I didn't have any really commitments. My family was back east, so I said, yeah, what the hey? And I went back and I started cleaning carpets. And within a year, we had done very well. He had been awarded the contract. And so he decided to franchise, and I happened to be his first franchise. And so neither one of us knew anything about business. It's franchising. He was a little bit more astute than I was, but that was the beginning of about another 13 years of me being in that business. Subsequently sold that business when he got out of the business, and the national retailer had actually bought him out. And at that point, he had owned the rights to all of Canada and all the United States as well. And I actually had one of the franchises in Delaware, so I did a lot of travel from Nova Scotia to Delaware for several years. And when he got out of it, it just wasn't the same. So I sold and went on and did some consulting work in the franchise field with an environmental company. They ended up going out of business. And so then I just dabbled in the real estate and spent 10 years building my own real estate brokerage. I saw the value of real estate, but I just couldn't see the value of the traditional model of real estate. So like the entrepreneur I was, found a partner and just said, hey, let's do real estate a little differently. And so we did. And as I went through this, I wasn't sure if this was something I wanted to do. I mean, at one point I had over 200 employees, owned a call center, was operating in Canada and the United States. So I was always kind of thinking, what's the next thing? And it just so happens I came upon, or actually my son came upon a sport called Floorball. And he showed me a couple of videos. The sticks were really cool. I couldn't find the equipment anywhere. I had to go to Central Ontario, to Toronto, actually, and find a distributor. Got the sticks. He brought it to his school. The school absolutely loved the sport. Next thing you know, they're ordering some equipment. And so as I was going about ordering some equipment, the supplier essentially said to me, "Hey, how would you like to be a distributor for our equipment in the East Coast?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" I was at my real estate business, a little extra side cash and some fun. And I had coached hockey at that point for almost 12 years. I'd refereed hockey, still was refereeing hockey. And so I played sports growing up, and I thought, hey, what a great little hobby to get involved with a new up and coming sport, which I thought was up and coming, until I took a trip to Sweden and actually saw the World Floorball Championships and witnessed 12,000 people watching this championship game between Sweden and Finland. And then I was blown away. And so when I came back from that trip, I just felt, hey, this could be something that if given the right legs, it could grow into something. And so I approached a number of schools. Next thing you know, the school board were on board, and they wanted to see all their teachers trained, and they bought a bunch of equipment. And then I was, asked by parents in the school itself is, where do we play? Where do the kids go out of school? And so, I looked at the other sports that were out there, and I felt that this was a very good complement, I guess, alternative to some of those sports that were out there. And so I just took the next step, started some leagues with a couple of friends of mine who were business associates, and we dabbled in running a sports league, and we did well. It turned out better than we expected. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the schools really loved this new sport, and that it was a new shiny object type of sport, and people took to it. And we started getting requests from other communities and other people to say, hey, look, we'd like to do it over on this side of the water. And problem then I was faced with was, hey, how do I do the same thing over that community as I'm doing here? And if you look at a lot of the youth sports programs, the organized sports programs, they're, as much as they're organized, they run in silos for the most part. So I just said, hey, I don't want to take the chance that something is not going to work the same on the other side of the water as it worked here. And so I kind of kicked back to my franchise days, and I said, the best way to do this would be to systemize it so that we follow the same process, we make it everybody the same, the coaches get the same training, and so the experience is the same for the kids no matter what the community is. And of course, that just led into, okay, well, if we're going to scale this, is there a larger business opportunity here? And the timing was great for me. My real estate partner was deciding to get into business. I didn't foresee me staying in there much longer. And so I just took the pathway saying, hey, why don't I just get into the organized sport business? And then I did a ton of research on the industry, and I found a lot of the shortcomings. And like anything, I just said, hey, if I was to create this from scratch with brand new sports, how would I do it differently? And I just went up, I just decided to go out and do sport a little differently with new sports. And so here I am 7 years later, and we've built a model now, and we've kind of tested it and proven it, and we're now in the franchising of this sport. So that's my journey over the last 33 years.
That's fascinating. So basically starting out as a franchisee, carrying it forward, and all along the way, learning those step-by-step lessons about growing business and working things, and then realizing with this latest opportunity that it could be a good candidate for franchising, because as you said, being able to systematize the delivery and the experience, that's what franchising is all about, right? Every one of you can think of, that's ultimately what they're doing. So let's maybe go back to the start when you headed out with your friend in the carpet business. What were some of the early lessons you learned in trying to run your own business and that first effort out of the chute?
Money doesn't grow on trees. I gave up a decent job. I moved back east. Maybe I was a little foolish, but I just felt that I could. It's not that I'd given up what I'd learned through engineering, and the big thing that I'd learned was problem solving. Looking at ways to solve problems from different angles and different solutions. So, I had to really rely on that kind of skill to get around some of the things I didn't know about business. The very first year I was in business, my friend obviously franchised, and we felt there was a value that we had created in this business. So he came up with a price that he thought would be a fair price. And of course, I didn't have that kind of money, and I went to my parents, who just retired and who just used all they had in their savings to buy a house in north of me in Cape Breton. And thankfully they believed in what I was doing. They were disappointed that I was leaving a good career, but they did get a loan, and they did use their house as collateral. I was able to buy the franchise for my friend. But about 6 months later, we had a tax that hit across Canada. It was known as the GST back then. And so essentially it was a 7% tax on everything, services, everything. And so we went into a little mini recession in the fall of 1990, which was supposed to be the best time of year for carpet cleaning, leading up to Christmas. And so sales plummeted. And then the winter came, which is the worst time for carpet cleaning. And so here I was sitting on about $40,000 worth of debt. I was staring down the barrel that I couldn't make the loan payment, and possibly my parents might have to lose their house, the retirement house. And I was 26 years old and didn't know what to do. And so met up with my buddy. We kind of put he obviously wanted to see me succeeded. He had a couple more years experience than I did. We put a game plan together, went back to every one of my suppliers. I somehow convinced them to take 1/12 of a payment. Whether it was $12 or $1,200, I stuck to 1/12, and I agreed to pay them all off in 1 year. And in the meantime, I paid cash for everything and never extended myself. And so it was a tough year. At 26 and about to lose a business. And if that's, the hardest thing, what was more discerning was I was going to lose my parents' retirement home. But got through it. You know what I mean? We made deals. It was a little bit of grit, a little bit of determination, a little resilience. I don't know where I've got those characters from. I like to think that as I played sports growing up, all through my junior high and middle school and high school, I did somehow find that competitive edge there in me, and maybe that helped.
Yeah.
Anyway, got through it, and I'd say that was probably the first near-death experience, and probably the life lesson or the business lesson there is really watching your cash flow and really, preparing yourself in a way that you just don't assume everything's going to be great in the next couple of months.
I see that from time to time with small business owners, especially those that are relatively new in the game. They haven't yet embraced the idea of cash flow and cash management. They look at a checkbook and say, well, there's still money in my checkbook, I must be okay. But there's a whole lot more to it than that. And knowing, having a plan and a forecast of the big ticket items that are coming up, because today you might have money in your account, but if you've got to make payroll and pay a bunch of other big bills in the next 30 days, it may not be enough. And so figuring out how to manage that properly.
I didn't like business plans. I didn't see the value of them. When someone told me to do a business plan, I couldn't see it. But today I can, because I've done 2 or 3. Cash flow projections, I couldn't see the value of it. Today I can. It's one thing to have a budget, and that's great. Everybody says, I made trillions of dollars on paper, but that's never the case. When you got that budget, it doesn't mean you're going to make that money. And so I just find having a good sense of cash flow, how your money is plus and minus every month, and anticipating some higher than normal expenses has kept me that more astute in the business ventures thereafter.
How far into the game were you before you realized the significance of this thing we call margin, profit margin, versus just how much money you're taking in? You know, a lot of small business owners, they look at the so-called top side line and they go, oh, look at all this money I'm taking in. But yeah, how much are you really making?
Profit was a nice word. And I knew that profit was a big part of business. But I didn't really understand profit. Like, profit was what was left over and I took for my pay. You know, there wasn't anything really more than that. Essentially, and I think this was one of the pitfalls that I got myself involved in, maybe other business people do too, is that I had created myself a job and didn't know it at the time. And so what I was taking out as profit essentially was a salary or a commission payment that I could have probably gotten from a business, from a career elsewhere. The only real difference is that I got to decide, you know, what I did every day. And, you know, as a young mid-20 type of guy, I did a bit of travel, and you know, more of my friends from my upbringing had gotten into the business. So we just got in the habit of having fun with the business. And profit, you know, knowing what I know now, it didn't enter my mind as something that was real. It was just, if there was money left over, that was profit, and I just took it.
Yeah.
And so I think good 4 years before I started to settle down, and part of that wasn't me. I actually a partner had come along who had some education as a business major in financing and accounting, and he could see that the financials a lot different than I could see. I didn't even read my financials. Matter of fact, there's 3 years I just put everything in a shoebox and I took it to the tax person, and you know, as long as I submitted my corporate tax, I checked that box. I didn't know what numbers meant. When he came along, he approached the business from a different perspective, and so I learned a lot as a result of that partnership.
Yeah, there are definitely a couple of key dynamics that first-time entrepreneurs struggle with getting an understanding of, so that they can run a sustainable business. And I love your phrase, not just create a job for yourself. You know, there's a huge quantum difference in those two things. It's one thing to have some steady cash that you can take out of the business so that you can meet your personal obligations and live the kind of life you want to live, albeit maybe basic at the time. But it's another thing to create a company that's going to generate profits that can turn the business, fuel the business to keep growing and keep expanding. Much different ball game. I'll tell you what, Anthony, it's hard to believe we're kind of up on a break point here. We're going to take a pause and stop for this commercial message, but we'll be right back after the break.
Business is all about solving complex problems as fast as you can create them. Become the best problem solver by leading others to greatness too. And the first step is going to DougThorpe.com. Doug Thorpe is known globally for coaching entrepreneurs and business leaders, improving their performance and the work output of everyone surrounding them. You can find health, wealth, and happiness by learning to lead others to health, wealth, and happiness. Go to DougThorpe.com now and order Doug's books or hire him to coach your managers. That's DougThorpe.com.
Well, all right, we're back. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense, and I'm Doug Thorpe, your host. Today, I'm talking to Anthony McNeil. We are talking about his experience as a serial entrepreneur, several different ventures that he's been a part of. His latest is the creation of a franchise model for a premier sports league for youth and young adults. Anthony, tell us a little bit more about Premier Floorball and how you got into that and what you saw as the ultimate opportunity.
Yeah, Doug. Essentially, I didn't get into the floorball thinking it was going to be a business, as I had alluded to earlier. It was just kind of one of those things I did on the side. But then when people started to want more from me to make available to them the sport, I did a little bit of research because, you know, if I was going to go into the industry, I'd want to know what I was going into. I had just seen a lot of shortcomings in the industry. particularly on things like winning at all cost cultures, like some of the efforts, the way some kids were treated. And, I experienced that as a referee, parents screaming, coaches yelling at kids on the bench. Like, I just thought that was part of sports. But when you dive a little deeper into these advocacy groups, and there's some great ones out there, True Sport and in Canada, Sport for Life, and they talk about the trajectory that youth sports is heading with, banners in the rink over developing players and developing these elite athletes, and the money that goes into developing these elite athletes at, 8, 9, and 10 years old. I just felt that, I didn't want that from whatever I was going to create. And so I actually took a different path. I just, I'm a man of faith, and I just said, you know what? I'm just going to create a ministry of sport. And that way I'll go into the church and I'll bring it in. We'll just play. We'll have some fun. It's a new sport. There's no professional hype. Nobody really knows about these sports. We'll take a little time out. We reflect on a passage maybe that is applicable to the sport. Maybe something on character. Maybe something on discipline. We thought we were doing great. I said earlier, the two partners I brought in, I brought them in because I'd made a connection with them through a Christian business networking group. And they had their strengths. One guy was a marketing guy. One guy ran youth sport for Athletes in Action. So I just felt that, hey, this is great. And I all my other businesses were very worldly and very money driven. I just felt this one had more of a purpose. But to our chagrin, the following season, when we went to renew everybody, I had people running in all directions away from our sport. We were called cult. We were called bait and switch for getting kids, and we're preaching to them. And, certainly wasn't our intent. The idea was to really keep sport at a level where kids could enjoy themselves. And so we were going to throw in the towel. And we had met with a couple of really wise counselors, spiritual counselors. And they said, look, you know what? You still got something valuable here. It doesn't have to be a ministry. It really could be a sport that you make a change in the lives of kids, and you just go about it a different way. And after some prayer and some reflection, I just said, you know what? Yeah, let's just go that way. Let's just take these new sports. Let's not build any hype around them. Let's make sure at the core of what we do is not the sport. Let's not make the sport the center of attention. Let's make the kids and what they learn from the sport the center of attention. So for us, it really was, the sport was there to serve, not the kids serve us. And so we just built everything around that value base, and we made sure that I consulted with these advocacy groups. I explored further some of the things that they proposed that, in order to change youth sports, here are some recommendations. A lot of those, for example, you'll see in a lot of sports organizations, there's some great volunteers, but sometimes those volunteers who are in leadership positions have agendas, or maybe they're not experienced. They're only there for a short term as a result of an election, and then they leave. And so one of the things we said, hey, by franchising, at least we have an owner there. The owner's on site. The owner has to bring some value every day, no different than any other consumable product. We have to fight and we have to say, hey, we have a product that's worth something to you, and we'll go to whatever length it takes to make sure your kid enjoys this, right? And so treating it like a business rather than just a kind of community organized, that was kind of the first approach. So the second thing is we wanted to make sure that all our coaches understood that they just weren't training on the sport. What we were more particular about was the fact that kids who come to our sport have to understand that they belong there, and they feel like they belong there. They need to understand that they do have a role to play, even if they're not as talented as their teammate. That they are part of that community, and that collectively within that team, they're heading towards whatever the mission is, whether to get better, to learn the sport more. We started working on building the competencies, so building them up technically, personally. We gave them responsibility so that they would be more confident. We gave them some autonomy to make some decisions on their own and to fail, and it was okay to fail, And so we just decided that if we're going to get into this industry, we wanted to get in with value first and foremost. And when a child walks in and then out of our leagues, they've developed some truly valuable life skills. And it was because of the sport. And so the go forward after that point, after we built all the systems around organizing, managing, running sporting events for the youth and adolescents, was was how do we ensure that this is the same no matter where we place this in what community. And that's the point we got to franchising. And a big part of franchising, as you know, when you go to a franchise, you expect the same delivery, the same quality of service, no matter where the location is.
Yeah.
And as much as I'd like to say that happens in all organized sports, the reality is that it doesn't. A lot of sport organizations, even in the same town, the same sport, operate in silos because it's not in their best interest to share expertise, because it means the possibility of losing that banner in their gym or something. Right?
Oh, I can definitely speak to that. With my family, we've been a lifelong, baseball family, and now I've got grandkids that are coming up in the little league system, and our particular local league is part of the international little league association, and so they follow the guidebook and the rules for that. But when you get out to the field and all the coaches are volunteers, there is a training, there is a standard, there is, some communication. But the reality is the final delivery is not the same. So the experience is not the same for every child that joins a team out there in that league. And sometimes you're blessed with a team of coaches that really know their stuff, and they really know how to develop the child to become a sportsman, not just try to worry about winning the game, but become a true sportsman at it. And for those that are struggling with a certain skill, some coaches work better than others at helping them get past that and develop that fundamental skill that's necessary. So I hear what you're saying. Real quick, Anthony, just describe the parameters of floorball for those of us that maybe are not familiar with it. How does the game look, and how many kids are on a team, and what's the general gist of the game?
Yeah, the thing about floorball is if you look at it, it looks like you're playing ball hockey, and essentially that's kind of the premise behind it. The big difference, hang on a second, I just got a little cough here. Sorry. The biggest difference is floorball has rules of play and equipment that are more in line with the sport of soccer. So it's not a sport that I created. It's been around for well over 40 years. As I mentioned earlier, Sweden and Finland are arguably the mecca of floorball. They've got like 400,000 players registered in their leagues. They've run it in every school. The essence behind floorball is that it's more to do with finesse, ball movement, and speed than it is to do with physical contact or brute force. And
brute force, yeah.
Absolutely. And if somebody said to me, like, what's the one or two things that are different? The main differentiator is that the stick, it essentially comes up to about your rib cage, the lower rib cage. They're lightweight composite, kind of a web blade. But that stick is actually part of your body. It's an extension of your arm. And so unlike hockey or ball hockey or floor hockey, and more like soccer, you can't make contact with that stick. You can't lift it. You can't hack it. You literally have to make contact with the ball first. So I always tell the kids, it's just like in soccer, when you have the soccer ball, somebody can't come behind you and chop your leg or kick the back of your leg to dislodge the ball. Well, the same thing applies to floorball. And so with floorball, you're playing in a gym, you're playing with this lightweight ball, lightweight sticks. So it's more about movement. It's more about controlling that ball, moving it around, very much like soccer. There's no offsides, there's no backcourts. If you're down deep in the offensive end, you can send it all the way back and regroup and come back upfield and look for that striker, look for that best opportunity. So I find that it's great from a conditioning perspective. It's great for hockey players who want to develop their mental skills because everything's faster now. They're thinking quicker. It's great for soccer players who want to do a kind of a different type of sport, but certainly it builds on their strategies. And so if you were to play it on the regular size court, the court is about 120 feet by 60 feet wide. So if you were to put that in perspective, if you're looking at a hockey rink, the floorball court itself would be the area between the 4 face-off circles on a hockey rink. So slightly less on each side, slightly less on the ends. And it's 5-on-5 plus a goalie. And the difference is that the goalies are on their knees. They don't have a stick. They don't have blockers or trappers. They look like they're a soccer goalie on their knees. The nets are smaller than soccer. They have a goalie crease where nobody's allowed in. They have a key where they can go out and pick up the ball. When there's a foul, i.e., let's say a stick is lifted or somebody hands a ball, which rather than let it hit off their body and play down, it's the same idea. The other team gets the ball. The opponent has to move back 10 feet, and you've got three seconds to play that ball. For the soccer players listening, they would understand that that's very much the process in soccer. If there's a foul where their team still retains the ball, the advantage is put on, so the call is not made. So a lot of this is because 40-something years ago, when these soccer players took these field hockey sticks and put skates on and went on a frozen soccer field, the sport of Indian bandy was created, and that eventually became floorball once it was put into an international governing body. And today it's in 72 countries, and there's World Floorball Championships. And a matter of fact, the World Games that are being held in Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama, this coming, I believe it's this coming summer, one of the 30 sports is floorball. And so I would encourage anybody, if you're in the area, first of all, go to the World Games because it's great. It's all the sports that the International Olympic Committee looks at to decide if they're going to become an Olympic sport. But just go look at these professional players. Team USA, matter of fact, this weekend, somewhere in Dallas, outside of Dallas, Team Canada is playing against Team USA. And the winner is going to go on to the World Floorball Championships in 2023. And so it's happening this weekend. And I don't know when you're going to televise that, but this weekend would be the April 29th or so. And so there is an international and national competition levels. And so, most people wouldn't know that. Matter of fact, right about a year ago, the North American Floorball Association was formed. And right now there are something like 6 semi-professional teams in the United States that will be competing on a regular basis. So nice. we're seeing the birth of this sport in North America, and it's only going to get better. And that's partly why kids are going to take to it in our leagues and work their self up to that level. Yeah,
well, that's great. I know for many people, they see some of these what people think of as traditional European sports like soccer or even lacrosse. But I know, at least down here where I am, lacrosse has really taken off. It was formerly kind of a Northeastern sport, sort of Ivy League kind of penetration. But I can think back, at least for 20, 25 years now, lacrosse has been growing in our high school levels. A lot of schools have lacrosse teams. I had a good friend who was a leader in the lacrosse league in the region down here, and he had gone to Penn University and was a collegiate lacrosse player, but brought it down here with him when he came and convinced the school leaders to expand the program. And so there's a lot of opportunity, and back to your original point, the character development of these young people. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think there's so much. I'm not saying that all sports organizations are bad or they're going down this path. The consensus is that they're in a decline. And so I think what gets lost in all that are all the players that just are not that not the 1% that make it to the pros. And it's almost the reverse. And many organizations cater to developing these 1%ers at the expense of the 99% that just want to play and just want to have fun and just want to learn new sports and meet new people. And what happens if the focus switches from developing just our elite players, that the resources, the time, the commitments, the coaching, it all starts to get second. You know, it becomes second to these other 99% of the kids. And I just find growing up playing sports as a dad, as a coach, as a referee, I just see sports can bring so much more than just the sport, just the technical skills. And I think if that's not put front and center, if that doesn't become the value of the organization, or it doesn't become part of their mission and their drive, I think that there's a lot lost in that, in the character development of the kids, the life skills. And unfortunately, fortunately, I mean, the pathway has been created for the professional levels in baseball and basketball and hockey. But I think what happens is that a lot of parents, and maybe kids too, because of the parents, get carried away with the hype of the professional players and the money and the fame that comes with it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, groom some kids, because there are some really gifted and talented kids that deserve, and we'll get to that level, but not at the expense, I don't find, of all the other kids. And I think it's important that you have to put the interest of the child and what the sport can do for that child. Look, I've already witnessed it in our leagues up here. We've had children that have had hard family lives, and we're their only source when they come to play sport of peace and contentment. Their dad and mom might have split up. They're having a rough go at school. I had one child, he had ADHD, couldn't play all the mainstream sports, because at that point, the 6'4" guy is playing basketball, and, the 300-pounder is playing football. He came, he wanted to play. We gave him a chance, put some goalie gear on him. He's been with us for 5 years now, and I got to say, he's my favorite guy. Like, every time I see him, he loves being there. He's enjoying it. All the players accept him. There's no hype. And I think if we can somehow take that away from the culture within the sport organization, and I have to say, it's usually the adults that bring that in, not the kids, and usually some of the leadership. Then I think that what happens is, if we can take that away, we can get back to the root of what sports is. Not necessarily give up on the competition, or not give up on developing elite players, but not making it at an all cost type of
win at all cost. It's that win at all cost mindset that disrupts that opportunity to build character and help people grow. And I'm perpetually amazed at business leaders I run into, when you meet somebody and you realize they're just a little bit different, and I mean that to the good. Inevitably, when you start digging into their story, they have a chapter in their life of some organized sport activities somewhere, either community or school, maybe even up potentially to the college level. They got to play, and they never made it to the pro ranks, but they had that experience, and maybe it stopped at high school, or maybe even it stopped at junior high, but still there's a very solid foundational set of values and principles that they took away from the experience. So having programs that still promote that and still provide that to our youth, I think is wonderful. So kudos to you, Anthony, for perpetuating that.
Well, thank you. And part of that is the sport we've aligned ourselves with. We intentionally look for sports that are easy to learn and play. You don't need any special skills. You don't need it. They're genderless for all intent and purposes. Your biology makes no difference. Sports like floorball, sports like futsal, that's another big up and coming sport. It's already big. It's just that people aren't aware of it. But it's a pseudo soccer sport that's modified for indoors. Korfball, and there's 20 or 30 of them that really kids can jump in at any age, participate, become active, become healthy. And I mean healthy all the way around, emotionally, mentally, physically. But all that is all for naught. I say the rubber hits the road when the value systems of our organizations meet the kids, and that's in coaching. And if we don't take the time and train coaches, and I don't mean a certification once and that lasts for 8 years. I don't mean a coach that's really good. He or she was the best baseball player, and so we put them behind the bench. That's not necessarily the right thing, because they may be technically the best player in their time, but they really are struggle with developing kids. So I think there needs to be more emphasis on training those coaches on a regular basis with the right skill sets and mindset more than anything. That the kids that are here are here for the moment that they're here. And while we have them, let's not make it all about just the sport or all about just them. It has to be about the community they belong to, the teammates that they're part of, and a shared mission on what we're going to do this year with our group, and make those children belong. To me, that's going to do a much greater good, and I say greater with a capital G from my world, than if you just push them through and try to get the most out of them every single day, and then on the drive home talk about how poor they were, or that they're not as good as the other player, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So I preface all this by saying I don't think it's gone to the wolves yet, but certainly from what I understand and from what I've been experiencing, I'd like to think that we're reaching a tipping point where sports really needs to be reevaluated. Yeah. And like you said, there's some great coaches that have the right mind, but they're just in the wrong organization. And there's some great organizations that have maybe some of the wrong coaches. And if we can just pull those two together, I think you're going to see a transformation in the sport. We picked the low-profile sports intentionally because we don't want that professional hype. We don't want that pathway created. There's already cultures created in a lot of those sports that it'd be too hard for us to change. And so that's our MO, is essentially to go find these fun, easy to learn, easy to play sports, organize them, and then put the right coaches behind the bench.
I think that's great, Anthony. And thank you for sharing that with us. And hopefully, if you're listening to this and you have a role in a community sports league for the youth around you, I encourage you to think back to the basics of why you're doing it and what you're doing it for. So I think, Anthony, that's a great reminder, and thank you for that. I think we're up on our time here. We're going to have some contact information in the show notes if you want to get a hold of Anthony, find out more about the league and the programs he's running now. It is fascinating to think about and think about the opportunity for kids that maybe just aren't cut out for some of these other more, I hate to use the word, but I'll call them mainstream sports like football or baseball. But take a look and check it out. So, Anthony, thank you for being on the show. I think this has been a good one, man.
Yeah, and thank you, Doug, for giving me the opportunity to speak in what I'm very passionate about. And when you're in your late 50s and you've got a new business venture, for me the why now is more important than the what. And and I just feel at this point, I'm here to do something more than just something for myself, and I'm really hoping that this is the business to do it with.
I appreciate that, and thanks for sharing that. So, well, again, it's been a pleasure, Anthony, and thank you, folks. This has been another episode, and we're going to wrap it up now and sign off. But hope to see you again soon. I do want to remind everybody, if you're listening via audio download, we do have this show on video over at my YouTube channel, the same title, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. You can check out the video and any of the link information for getting a hold of either one of us if you want to learn more about developing your leadership availability and ability. So we're going to sign off and say again, thank you very much. Take care and hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.